This is episode number 62 with Kathy Vines, the founder of Clever Girl Organizing. Welcome to the Good Life Coach podcast. I am your host, Michelle Lamoureux. The intention of this show is to awaken you to your fullest potential. Join me each week for inspiring interviews to elevate an area of your life, as well as interviews with women entrepreneurs who are creating success on their own terms. Each episode provides actionable tips to guide you to design a life you love. Hey there, welcome back and Happy New Year. I want to wish you the most beautiful, happy, abundant, healthy, successful year ever. I hope that it's just such a great year for you. And I wanted to bring back on a guest that I thought would be the most useful on the very first day of January, which is about home organizing. Now, most of you listening, I imagine, have some place in your house that needs a little TLC. It's calling for your attention, and whether or not you're aware of it, the clutter is emotionally and mentally weighing you down. And as we've all felt when we've ever decluttered a space, it just makes you feel lighter and happier, and you just want to be in that space more when everything has its place. So to help us navigate home organization, I've brought on Kathy Vines, who's a certified professional organizer, productivity specialist, and the author of Clever Girl's Guide to Living with Less, Break Free from Your Stuff, even when your head and heart get in the way. Now, Kathy was actually one of my very first podcast guests. You can find the first interview with her where we go really in depth into home organization, even dealing with paper, which is my nemesis. But that is in episode number 9, and I will link that in the show notes so that you can tune into that one as well. But today we cover how to get started. It's a new year. There's that sense of renewed energy, that feeling of a clean slate, and you've got the motivation. So I said, Kathy, come back on. Let's talk for 30 minutes and be really specific about a few key areas to help everyone be set up for success. And as always, Kathy does deliver. You will love the conversation. She's going to help us figure out how to prioritize, where to start in our house, how to keep motivated so that we actually complete what we begin, what supplies we need to have on hand, and so many other great tips. Now, Kathy has been featured in the Boston Globe, Better Homes and Gardens, Real Simple magazine, and has also appeared on Inside Edition, where she helped a family of 7 organize their refrigerator. There is not a space in your house that Kathy is not a pro at. So always fun talking to her. I know you're going to love today's interview. So let's get into the show. Welcome back to the show, Kathy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh, well, you were one of the most popular episodes. I don't know if I got to tell you. Did I tell you that? You've been one of the most downloaded episodes because I think everyone wants help with home organization.
I love hearing that. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Well,
I'm busy year round because of that same need. So I love hearing that your listeners do too.
Yeah, I think we all need a little bit of help with that. In at least some area of our house, I think, is like begging for that. So because it's the new year, and I think people have that renewed sense of like energy and like I can take on the world. It feels like a clean slate, and we want to take that momentum and we want to channel it into their garage or their closet or somewhere that they need help with. And this includes myself. I'm not putting myself in a separate category at all. And so we talked prior to the show about keeping this really focused so that people can they can go back and listen to episode number 9, and I'm going to link that in the show notes, and they can go much deeper because we covered like pretty much everything in that. But we're going to help them with a roadmap today. So I want to kick it off with asking you, how do you prioritize where to even begin? Because there may be your closet and your office and the garage and some boxes you've been meaning to get to. So like, how do you even know where to begin?
Yeah. And it is one of the biggest questions I get when I work with clients who say, I just don't know where to start. Right. So I'll typically help somebody choose and prioritize on one of 3 different approaches. Number one, what could we finish quickly? Right? So, what's something that you could say, I'm just going to spend a day on one space, one project, one category, and I'm going to get it done. Right? So, you get a sense of accomplishment and you're really able to say, oh, I actually can tackle this. I'm ready for something bigger. So,
Mm.
the first approach is potentially something you can do in one sitting, one session, one day. The second is, where would it make the biggest impact to my daily life?
Mm.
Right. So, what space is really frustrating to you? For a lot of people, that might be, oh, the kitchen counters are driving me crazy, or I can't get ready in the bathroom every morning. My whole family's in here and all of our stuff's here, or wasting time every day. It's driving me crazy. Like that would make a big difference. For some people, it's the paper on their desk. They really want to get work done on their desk, and it's their paper and the clutter on their desk that would really make a difference in how they live every day.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's really more around the importance and impact, whereas the
Mm-hmm.
first one's around kind of doability and feasibility.
Mm-hmm.
The third is, and this is almost a reverse of how would I deprioritize, it's, do you have room in this space to work? Right. So you might say, oh my gosh, my spare room is the worst. I really need to clean that out and I need to work on that. But if you don't have other space in your home to move things around to or to
Mm-hmm.
sort through, that's going to be a real barrier to getting things done, right? So you might
Mm-hmm.
say, I can't work on a really complicated space until I've created space somewhere else in the house so that I can work. So that might say, all right, I normally wouldn't pick the dining room first, but the only way I'm going to deal with the stuff that's in the spare room is if I have room to sort papers and I need that dining room table to work for me.
Mm.
So, because it becomes like an enabler to a
Yeah.
bigger project,
Yeah.
that's the third strategy is, does another space give you room to work? That's critical for you to work in a different space.
Okay, and we covered this a little bit in the first interview as well. What though if you have a partner, husband, roommate, someone else in the space with you, you may have different sets of priorities. Do you each tackle your own space? Do you have any advice around that, or what's your thinking about that?
Yeah, and when you're lucky, you both have different priorities, but you're both equally interested and
Mhm.
motivated to make something happen, right?
Yeah.
So more often I hear from couples, "Oh, my spouse doesn't want to, but I do," right? So it's not necessarily different priorities as much as it is a different approach to what's organized and what's a happy life in this space.
Mhm.
But I do think there's you have your own space, the other people in your home have their own spaces, and then there's the community space. And
Mhm.
that's where things can sometimes come together with prioritization around, all right, what would we want this living room to be like? What would we want this dining room to be like? We both use the kitchen, right? One of us really cooks, but the other one's really responsible for getting the kids out the door and using the space to do it. So it's those mixed spaces where
Mhm.
you want to make sure you have a conversation about priorities. But typically, if both parties are motivated to do work, have them work in their own space where they really have a say
Yeah.
around what stays, what goes, and in terms of the systems that are in that space, what works for their brain, right?
Mhm.
So if one person's really in charge of most of the laundry, that's the person who should figure out what works for that
Mhm.
space,
That's
not
fair.
somebody else who isn't really going to be interacting with the laundry.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I know we had two other questions that we were going to tackle, but I have to ask you this because as you're talking about, take a day or whatever amount of time
Yeah.
you have, I think that we don't start because we don't want to spend
Yep.
our time doing that. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, if I have a free day, I want to spend it with my family, with my kid, with my friends, going for a walk. Like, the last thing I want to do is deal with my papers that are on my desk
Yeah.
or clean out that closet. But I know how good I'm going to feel after, but I just can't even start. I can't
Yeah.
even get myself to that place of that little win, even maybe, so that I know remind myself. It's kind of like working out sometimes.
It's a lot like working out
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Where you know
Yes.
how good it feels after the fact, but you
Right.
still aren't doing it, even though you know you feel great after. But
Right. And and one of the things that I say, and I say it to about myself, right? You can't schedule motivation.
mm,
You can't schedule inspiration. So when you have that inspiration to say, you know what, I'm going to go tackle something right now, get up and do it. I used to joke, and this is long before I was a professional organizer, that there was nothing more motivating to get something clean than watching an episode of Hoarders, right? You watch that, you're just like, I can't sit down. I gotta go clean something, right? So it was, and I typically would, right? I'd get up and like, I gotta go wash all the dishes. I can't live like this. And there's 3 dishes in there, but it was super compelling at that time. But that idea of, you know what, I am motivated. And that's where sometimes I feel like people let it escape, right? They think they're motivated at the time, and they're like, oh, right, what? I have to wait till it's perfect, until I have everything in place, until I know exactly what I want to do, until I can totally imagine the end game. I have to wait till everything's perfect before I even start. And I think that that's not true. And I think that that can get in people's way. And so when you are inspired, and it doesn't have to be, I'm inspired to take 8 hours. It can be inspired to take 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And what can you do in that? And that's something that I like to work with people a lot, is saying, don't feel like you have to tackle the whole project to make it worth pursuing progress.
Okay, that's fair. And actually, I think for me personally, and I think some people are going to relate to this, is that energetically lately, just the idea of knowing that there's spaces that aren't working for me and that are cluttered, the emotional weight of that is more uncomfortable than not wanting to begin. Does that make
Yes.
sense? Like, I am so ready. And that's is one of the reasons I brought you back on. I have a feeling there's other women out there going to be listening. They're going to be like, yeah, Michelle, I am so ready too. So let's get this going. Let's
Yeah.
start off the year with everything in its place.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things to keep in mind is everybody's threshold for that is a little different,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you might have somebody else might walk in your house and say, really? You think you have a problem with clutter? That's crazy. But what you know is that your threshold for what's driving
Yeah.
you mad is that's where you're at right now. And so I think you're right. There are a lot of people who say start off the new year, especially once you get through the holidays, right? No matter
Mm-hmm.
what you're celebrating, you probably had a little time off, you had a little time with friends and family, you ate a little too much, you drank a little too much. And so being able to say, okay, fresh start on a whole bunch of levels,
Mm-hmm.
but that stress that comes from being in an environment that doesn't make you feel good,
Yeah.
you know when that energy is really being triggered. And you know when you can start to say, if I don't do something about this, this is going to go south.
Absolutely. And you're right about the threshold. Now we're ready to declutter. We've prioritized at least where we're going to start, and we know we're going to declutter whatever space that is. What are some things we should think about and have on hand to make the process flow so that we can actually finish what we start?
Yes. So I always try and make sure that I have, when I'm working with a client, a few things in mind. So the first is we want trash bags.
Hmm.
We want recycling bags, or however you gather your recycling, a box or bag or something for donation, right?
Mm.
So those are going to be some of the 3 ways things are getting out of your house.
Hmm.
If you're working on paper, have a box ready for shredding. And one of the things that I think is overlooked by people when they get started is I like to have a box for a category called "This Goes Somewhere Else."
Hmm.
And the reason I do that is because it's really easy to get distracted while you're working in a space to say, oh, this belongs in the kitchen. You know what? It'll just take me 2 seconds. I'm just going to bring it there right now. And
Hmm.
then you go in the kitchen,
Hmm.
and then you heat up your coffee for the third time, and
Hmm.
then you're off somewhere else and you forgot where you were.
Totally.
And so I don't want people to have an easy invitation to leave the space,
Hmm.
because it behooves them and the work is on them to get back into it. So having a holding box that's "This goes somewhere else," that once you're done with the work in that room for the day, then you take that box and you disseminate it where things go around the house. That helps you stay focused.
Love it. And do you put on music or a podcast? Like for me, I've got to have something to keep me entertained. Good
Yeah.
music. Sometimes it's a podcast. It has to be something, entertaining or in my ear to keep me
I think it,
company. To keep me, that's
right.
me. Yeah.
Right. I think you have to know yourself.
Hmm.
Some people would say, I don't want to listen to a podcast because I'm going to focus too deeply on it, and it means I might not work so hard.
Hmm.
Some people might say, yeah, music is just exactly what I want, but I don't want it to have lyrics because I don't want it to be too engaging. You have
Mm.
to know what the right balance is between having that company
Yeah.
and still being able to accomplish your goals.
Mhm. Okay, fair enough. For me, and I'm just gonna be this is gonna be not a pro tip, because this isn't coming from Kathy. I have found that listening to Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 when I'm gonna do the dishes, that dun, dun, dun in the beginning, that
I know
music,
exactly what you
do you
mean.
know
I
what I'm
love it.
talking? That
Yes.
motivates me like nothing else, and so I will put that on, and it may loop 3 or 4 times, but I will get through it, and I will feel great. So I'm just giving that as a not a pro tip,
Well,
but
it's a
try
pro
it.
tip, right? What I love is you know what song it takes to get you in the mood. Like, I think if you're somebody who works out or has been like trying to run or something like that, you know what those songs are that
Yeah,
gets your head in a good
yeah.
space. It's the same. It's the same brain motivation, right? So if you have a soundtrack that gets you in a great spot and gets you moving,
Mhm.
play that.
Yeah, yeah, because 9 to 5 is not gonna get me motivated for 8 hours of doing my office, no, but 5 minutes in the kitchen doing dishes, it's like it's perfect, it's perfection.
Yeah,
Okay, now you touched upon something, you said 20 minutes, and I know
yeah,
you've got your 20-minute attack
I
strategy.
do. I do.
So, can you walk us through what that is and how we can use that to help us have success with our own organizing?
Yeah, I think early on, what I wanted to do was help people think about the fact that there are lots of things in your home or in your work or in your life that you can make a big difference on and maybe even finish with
Mm,
just 20 minutes of focus, right?
yeah,
And there's small projects that drive us crazy every day, right? It's your junk drawer, it's clean out the fridge, it's organize your sock drawer. These small spots. Your home is full of small spots that need attention,
mhm,
but not a lot of attention,
mhm,
just a concentrated, focused amount. So I have people think about what would be a good 20-minute attack. What could they spend 20 minutes on and really commit to focus, right? It's you're turning off notifications on the phone on your phone. You're telling people, hey, don't bother me for 20 minutes. You don't have TV on the background. It's really focused. Set an alarm, make sure you're doing it. And
mhm,
honestly, if it takes more than 20 minutes and you still have the energy for it, great. Keep doing it. But if it
mhm.
doesn't, it's okay to stop and say, I did 20 minutes. And remember, for a lot of people, 20 minutes is a lot more than they were doing already.
True. And is it 20 minutes whenever you have that 20 minutes? Like, when you're approaching the organizing, I always think
Yeah.
of it being like a weekend activity, just
Yeah.
because not because I
I
want it to be on the weekend, but that's when you have the time.
I think 20 minutes ends up being something that you can fit into a weeknight often,
Mhm. Yeah.
or even an early morning to say, all right, before I leave for work today, I'm actually going to tackle one of these.
Mm.
I keep a list of things on my phone. I have a note on my phone of little 20-minute attacks that I can do. Because I think a lot of it is also not just about getting organized, but it's about maintenance,
Yeah.
right? It's like, all right, if I had 20 minutes, what would I spend time on to go through? You know what? I actually might look through my clothes and see if I want to get rid of anything. I'm going to look through
Mhm.
my tops. That's something that I'm always need to do and kind of go through. I'm going to go take an inventory of all the paper goods we have in the house and see what needs to be refilled so that the next time I go to the store, I know what I need. It's
Mhm.
really short, but I know I have to go to every bathroom and see where I am on toilet paper and what's in the basement and how are we doing on paper plates. But it's one category of where I can spend concentrated time to check something off my list that helps
Mhm.
run my home.
Okay. And in the first interview, you talked about habits and systems.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about sounds like a system. So what do you use? Your iPhone to track keep those lists of what you need to be
I
done?
do. I'm really simple, right? So have an iPhone and I use Notes
Mhm.
pretty heavily.
Yeah.
I for a long time I was using an app called Anydo.
Mhm.
And I just found that notes were simple enough, and I didn't need anything more complex.
Mhm.
Some people really do. So, an app like AnyDo or Remember the Milk or any list, they really are a natural list maker and task manager, and they can help you keep that, and maintain that. I also use Evernote
Mhm.
for a lot of things, but for right now, especially because Notes also gives me the ability to check things off. It has
Right.
that kind of bullet check.
Yep.
It's working fine for me for that. So I'll keep a note in my file that's just 20-minute attacks and I can go through it and I can add new things to it. I can say, oh, you know what? Oh, that's right. I want to get that one done in the spring. I should just put that in my calendar as a spring cleaning attack.
Awesome. And with your priority list that we talked about in
Hmm.
step 1, do you have a deadline assigned to it?
For my own tasks or in general?
Well, both. Let's say both, because I imagine
Okay.
you're giving your clients similar advice to what you know works, and that's
Yeah.
probably what you're doing.
Yeah. Right. So I would say when it comes to prioritization,
Mhm.
if somebody's going to say, listen, it's the first week of the year, I want to get something done. I'm going to say, all right, well, if I'm talking to them, I say, when would you need to get this done by? So sometimes you do have a deadline, right? Like I have company coming on the 15th. This has to be done by then. All right.
Mhm.
Well, life is giving you a prioritization and a deadline. But I also like the idea of helping them with accountability. So if I have a client who tells me, listen, I want to get this project done this week, this is what's important to me, I'll say, great. Why don't you text me by Sunday and let me know if you finished it? So
Mhm.
they know that
Yeah.
that gives them a little bit of light under their fire and that
Mhm.
somebody else is paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super helpful. Now, is there anything I didn't ask that you think would be helpful?
You know, I can I tell you a little bit about my organizing challenge that I'm doing in
Yeah,
2020?
of course you can.
Oh,
Please.
great. So I think that it's built a lot around some of the things that we've talked about. The same thing of you start out in the beginning of the year with this gumption that yes, I'm definitely going to live differently this year. I need a clean slate. I'm going to get a control on this place.
Mhm.
And I've done an organizing challenge. This coming up one for 2020 is going to be my seventh one.
Mm.
And I have some people come back every year, which I love. And it's a testament to, it's one thing to get organized, it's another thing to be organized, it's
Mhm.
maintenance.
Mhm.
And so uh, I also try and change it up a little every year, not only for my participants to feel like they're getting something fresh, but also for me. And so this year I'm making it pretty simple and straightforward. We're going to do 11 weeks. We start the first Monday of the year, right? So
Mhm.
coming up on Monday the 6th, and we're going to go through the beginning of spring. So it's a little shorter than last year because I
Mhm.
found by the time spring came around, people were like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going outside. Whatever I got done, I got done. But each week, what we're going to focus on is decluttering 20 things and each week tackle one 20-minute attack. So 20 things, 20-minute attack. It's 2020, right? Cute.
Mhm. Cute, very cute.
So, but the decluttering is really around saying, whereas in the past, I've done an approach saying, all right, let's work on our linen closet. Let's work in this space. Let's work through our home office. And it's been really system focused and trying to be thorough through a
Mhm.
space and more
Yeah.
around the process.
Yeah.
This one's more goal oriented, right? So for somebody who likes to check the box and say, yep, I got my 20 things, this is going to be really motivating. So again, it's a simple approach. We'll guide them each week saying, all right, this week we're going to be in the kitchen. This is where you can find your 20 things. So I'll still have guidance about where I want people to focus their time and their
Mhm.
energy.
Mhm.
But the commitment is really that they're going to find these 20 things and let go of them. And that they're going to do a 20-minute attack to help drive some of these efficiency issues within small areas of their home.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll link to that as well in case somebody wants that
Great.
extra level of accountability, which is always helpful, I think. Kathy, one final question then. What do you see as the most common challenge that clients have with getting going and then maintaining? Like what are the actual issues there?
One of the things with getting going is sometimes people think it will take longer to make something happen than it really
Mm,
does. So they
yeah.
say, I couldn't possibly do this. I don't have a whole weekend to clean out my garage. And you're like, you know what? I actually bet it's more like 3 hours. I don't think it's the 15 hours you think it is.
Mhm.
So sometimes because they have poor ability to either estimate time or they just think it's going to be harder,
Mhm.
it seems too big to tackle.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things is people find it to be too scary
Yeah.
to take on. So why bother taking it on at all?
That's true. And then maintaining means what? They didn't put the systems in place to keep it going?
Typically, maintaining what I find is either one of two things. Number one, they're not putting the time in, and it doesn't take a lot of time, right? But
Mhm.
once your kitchen's in great shape, it probably takes 5 minutes a day to keep it that way after
Mhm.
your normal stuff of doing dishes. I think about things like a pile, right? Every pile in your house started with one piece of paper,
Mhm.
started with one thing, and you thought, oh, that's fine. I'll take care of that later.
It's true.
It's not a big deal. And
Yeah.
then it's easy to add one or two more things because after all, I'm going to take care of it and suddenly it's 30 things or it's 50 things and
Mhm.
it's the scariest thing in your room. So that's where I think the maintenance part by telling yourself, listen, I'm either not going to let piles pile up, or when it gets to a pretty small amount and a pretty small height, that's when I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to stay disciplined to make sure I'm keeping the piles at bay, because I know myself and I know piles end up being something I just shove. Companies coming, it goes in a drawer, it goes in a cabinet, and it doesn't get handled. And who knows what's getting lost in there, but it's certainly not getting tackled.
So everything needs its place.
Everything always needs its place.
Yeah, I think
that is a part. I think what ends up being in piles is, well, I don't know what else to do with this, so
right.
I'm just going to leave this here.
Yeah. Give us just a little bit of advice then for people who have children, because you've worked with a lot of families.
Yes.
And so their little things start accumulating everywhere. And so,
Yeah.
you don't notice they're doing a little Lego project here and a little art project here. And next thing you know, you're like, where is my kitchen counter? Or
Yes.
that's where it's like, oh, so how do you help the parents then get the kids to be involved in that?
Yeah. And so, I think you're right. I think I work with a lot of families like that. Sometimes we talk a little bit about boundaries, saying, all right, well, do you want to have certain rooms where some activities are off limits, right? No
Hmm.
Legos in the living room, art projects are only in the kitchen, things like that,
Hmm.
which can help to have that there. Sometimes you think about, okay, the dining room is okay for the art projects to be created, but the dining room isn't where I want art supplies to live, right? I
Right.
want my dining room to still feel like a dining room. So you have those conversations saying your art supplies can still live somewhere else. You can work here, that's totally fine. But when you're done, this is what cleaning up looks like. I think when I work with families who, especially as kids get a little older and they can be more responsible for
Mm-hmm.
cleaning up,
Yeah.
it's talking about some time management as well, saying, all right, you have an hour to play,
Mm-hmm.
but that last 10 minutes of that hour is cleanup. So it's not an hour of play and then maybe cleanup happens some other time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to teach kids around time management and boundaries and self management around, okay, I can tell Alexa or Google Home to say, set alarm for 50 minutes. And that's my warning that 10 minutes is left and it's time to clean up. And it's integrating the fact that everything you do,
Mm-hmm.
cleaning as you go, is part of what can make the home feel better.
I love that. I think that's for grown-ups too. Like we need to,
Yeah.
even if we know something's going to be an hour, like, okay, the last 10, 15 minutes has got to be
Yeah.
that cleaning up. Okay. Can you leave the women listening with, I don't know, your best like a favorite pro tip that your clients love?
I love this one that I've been using with some people lately, talking about kids' artwork,
Okay.
right? I talk to a lot of moms and dads who struggle with the kids' artwork and everything, and they want to keep it all. And I've done this with a couple of clients, creating the American Idol approach
Okay.
to managing their artwork, where the kids are involved with each week. The kids select what their favorites were from that week, and everything else can go. And then over the course of a month or a couple of months, they go back and say, all right, these were your favorites from this semester. What are your 5 favorites? So you get kids involved in helping to edit their own prolific art collection.
Love it. I love it. Although some kids are not going to let any of it go, but that's a separate issue.
But that's part of this, right? It's helping them think about how to discern what's worth keeping and what's not worth keeping. It's a real skill, and it's helping them teach executive functioning, organization skills, and critical thinking, and being able to compare and prioritize. And they're doing it with their own stuff. So rather than it being left to the parents to decide, the kids are saying, all right, you know the deal. We're going to pick our favorite 3. What are those this week?
Love it. It's really empowering for them. So, Kathy, where can I direct people to learn more about you and your challenge that launches on January 6th?
Wonderful. So send them over to clevergirlorganizing.com. And for your listeners, if they sign up is through Sunday, January 5th, because we start on Monday. But if they're listening today in the next few days and they use the code GOODLIFE, I offer 10% off.
Awesome. That's super generous. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Such a fun conversation always. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope that today's conversation was helpful and that you walked away with at least one new strategy that you can put into action right away. I loved all of it, but my key takeaway was really around the decluttering, about having that I'm not sure what to do with this stuff yet box, so that you aren't walking around the house like, oh, it's only going to take me a second. I really love that tip because I'm guilty of that one. So all of the show notes will be over at thegoodlifecoach.com/062. And you can actually leave your key takeaway or takeaways on that comment page. I'd love to hear what did resonate with you and what you plan to put into action. I will make one ask. If you've been listening to the show for a while and you have been enjoying it, would you be kind enough to take just 1 minute to head over to iTunes and rate and review the show? That's actually how more people can find it, and that is my intention for 2020. I really want to share this information with as many women as possible, so that would mean the world to me. Thanks as always for tuning in, and I look forward to reconnecting with you next Wednesday. Bye for now.